Mergers and acquisitions. You see them all the time, right? They're the blockbuster moves of the business world, grabbing headlines with these massive billion-dollar price tags. But, behind all the flashy press releases and the handshake photo ops, there's a much more complicated and, frankly, often disappointing story.
Because here's the shocking truth, the stat that kind of blows your mind. More than half of all mergers and acquisitions ultimately fail. Yeah, they just don't deliver the value, the growth, or the synergies they promised on paper. Over half. So, what's going on here? That's the core question we're going to tackle. Why do these massive strategic bets so often just fizzle out? Well, the answer isn't in the deal-making itself, but in everything that comes after. To really understand the failures, we first have to understand the appeal. I mean, why do companies pour so much time, energy, and capital into these deals in the first place? What's the big attraction? And look, on paper, the reasons make perfect sense. In this crazy competitive world, M&A can seem like the ultimate shortcut, right? A fast track to new markets, game-changing technology, or just scooping up some world-class talent. These are all incredibly logical, strategic moves designed to build long-term value. So, if the strategy behind the deal is usually pretty solid, where does it all go so wrong? Well, that brings us to the most critical and honestly, the most overlooked part of the whole process. This is the stage where the vision either becomes reality or it just completely crumbles. It's called post-merger integration, or PMI. Think of it this way. The deal is the wedding. The PMI, that's the marriage. It's the messy, day-to-day, often unglamorous work of combining two completely different organisms, their people, their technology, their cultures. This is where the deal on paper becomes a reality or, a nightmare. And this is where the dream just slams into reality. In the boardroom, they're talking about synergy, but down on the ground, the employees are experiencing a culture clash. The plan calls for market growth, but the IT department is dealing with system chaos because none of the platforms talk to each other. You think you're acquiring for innovation, but you end up with a talent exodus as your best people get spooked and head for the door. When you really break it down, the challenges are immense, and they are deeply, deeply human. This isn't just about merging supply chains and software. It's about merging entire company DNAs, figuring out who's in charge now, and communicating so clearly and constantly that your most valuable people don't just run for the exits. Okay, I know this all might sound a little theoretical, so let's make it real. The best way to understand just how important integration is to look at how the giants of industry have handled it, both the triumphs and the total disasters. We're going to dive into 3 really revealing case studies that show just how differently these stories can play out. A textbook failure, a masterclass in success, and a third, more modern approach to getting it right. All right, first up, the cautionary tale. The infamous 1998 merger of equals between Germany's Daimler-Benz and America's Chrysler. On paper, this thing looked like an absolute powerhouse. In reality, it was a perfect storm of cultural incompatibility. The two cultures were polar opposites. You had Daimler, which was formal, hierarchical, and made decisions from the very top. Then you had Chrysler, which was all about being informal, agile, and collaborative. These weren't just stylistic differences. They were fundamental clashes in how you believe a business should even be run. The integration failed because the cultures never, ever did. Okay, now let's flip the script. In 2006, Disney, an animation giant that had kind of lost its creative spark, acquired Pixar, the undisputed king of computer animation. A lot of people were terrified, thinking Disney would just smother Pixar's magic. They were so wrong. Disney's leadership did something absolutely brilliant. They focused entirely on the integration. They made a deliberate, conscious effort to respect and preserve Pixar's unique creative culture. They protected the talent. In fact, they even put Pixar's leaders in charge of all of Disney animation. And then they aligned everyone on a shared vision of creative excellence. The result? Disney was totally revitalized and both studios started churning out hit after hit. So our third example shows there's yet another path to success. When Facebook bought Instagram way back in 2012, pretty much everyone assumed the small, trendy photo app would just be absorbed and disappear. But Mark Zuckerberg shows a completely different strategy. Facebook went for what's called a light touch integration. They left Instagram's team and culture largely independent, allowing them to keep innovating on their own terms, while providing the resources and massive scale of Facebook's platform. They understood that the value wasn't in controlling Instagram, but in letting it flourish. So what do all these lessons mean for the future?
Well, deals are getting even more complex. The reasons for merging are evolving, and so are the tools companies are using to try and navigate this integration minefield.
Today, it's not just about market share or cutting costs. Acquirers are now looking really hard at a company's environmental, social, and governance profile, their ESG score. They're driven by sustainability goals and the urgent need for digital transformation. These new factors just add even more layers to the integration challenge.
And as the challenges get tougher, the tools to solve them are getting smarter.
Companies are now using AI and advanced data analytics to try and get ahead of the curve. I mean, imagine being able to predict cultural clashes before they even happen by analyzing communication patterns or streamlining that system chaos we talked about earlier. This technology is being used right now to tackle the very integration risks that have caused so many deals to fail in the past.
Which brings us all the way back to our big question. When you strip away the financials, the strategy, the headlines, what is a merger really a test of?
Here's the ultimate takeaway. An M&A deal isn't just a transaction. It's a profound test of leadership, of cultural intelligence, and of a company's real long-term vision. The deal is the starting line, not the finish line. True, lasting value is only ever created in the thoughtful, difficult, and absolutely essential work of integration.